Welcome back to another episode of Talkoffamepod podcast with your host, Kylie. Today we're joined by the talented Michael Webb. He was part of Australia's Got Talent 2022, and he's also a magician. Thanks so much for joining, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kylie, for having me. Yeah, the Australian version. It's similar vibes. We've actually had a few judges that have been on both, but yeah, Australia's Got Talent was awesome fun. Only just happened. It was great.
It's crazy. Like I know, like you performed some magic on Australia's Got Talent. Like, were you always into magic? Like, were you always into it?
Yeah, I got lucky. I've got a big family, and older brothers would show me tricks when I was little. So I've been into magic when I was like 7 or 8. I can remember my first trick that someone did to me, one of my brothers, and it wasn't long after that I was learning my own. And it's always been, I carry cards everywhere I go. I love playing cards, but performing as well is so much fun. I'm the sort of person who'll just go up to a random person at the train station while we're waiting and try and do a trick on them. So I've been doing it, yeah, ever since I was quite little, which is great.
That's crazy. Like your brothers do it right too.
They no, they showed me when I was little, but just a trick or two they would have learned from a friend. I don't know. Not they don't do it as a job, nothing like that. Although I've taught their children. So I got 9 nieces and nephews. 10th one's due in a couple of weeks, but I've taught a few of those little ones, trying to get the next generation of Webbs into magic. But none of my brothers do it as a job. They're more numbers, finance guys.
Like, do you think like your nieces or nephews would kind of go into magic? Like, are they kind of interested, or do you think like, do you think it's like fun to do it, but it's like, oh, I don't think I should go into that career field type of thing.
Like a lot of people who get into it young, you kind of have waves, and you get into it, and you have like a 6 month passion, and you see people reacting, and you're like, this is cool. But then something might come along, some other, as a kid, it could be some new game on Xbox that can jump in and take over for a little while. But some of them have taken quite a big interest in it, and I think there's a chance. I'm hoping. I'm just gonna have to have my own kids so I can, force it on them, and they have no choice.
Yeah, like that's the best thing about having kids is that like you can just kind of force it and they will never get bored of it. Like
Just
that's the
live
best
that
part.
life, the life that you never got to live. Just force it on them.
For sure. Like I'm kind of curious on this one. Like, what is the best magic trick you can do?
Well, that's a good one. It's probably judged by other people. So in my head, funny thing in magic is like the most difficult thing doesn't necessarily translate to be the most impressive or I guess best trick. So I've done things where it's taken me months, years to get down, and I do it and I'm so proud. And then someone will go, that was cool. Can you do the other one where the switching thing, which is funnily not that hard. So I learned that it's up to the audience to rate that. So probably the trick that people are happy for me to do over and over again, and has probably been my like most viral video sort of thing, is guessing people's phone passcodes. So I'll
Ooh.
I'll guess someone's phone passcode in a group, and then the next one's like, do mine now, and then the next one will do mine. Whereas, and it's just like just as fun almost every time. So that's probably my favorite one and the one that people like the most.
Like, did you ever get any passcode wrong? Is it always like you always got it right each time?
I actually, funnily, very recently did a show on a stage, and there was probably 300 or 400 people. No one, like everyone, didn't know each other, and I get a person randomly on stage, and it has to be random for it to be convincing that I'm actually guessing it. Like if I choose someone, then people just think they're in on it. Choose this lady, and it was quite difficult. It was funny. Like I managed to make a good, fun, like light-hearted thing out of it, but I was using all my techniques, and she was being confusing, and she was being very tricky. Some people just, it's kind of like in hypnotism. If you just don't want to be hypnotized, that's like a thing. You can kind of like put up a wall. But most people are willing to have fun with it. But anyway, long story short, I got most of the numbers, but not all of it. Like I love that moment at the end when you hit that final number and then the phone unlocks and you can, swipe through the apps. Didn't get to hit that, but I made the most of it and I kept her on stage and I kind of had a backup plan. But yeah, that one was, it doesn't always work, which is kind of why I guess it's fun for me as well. Like I genuinely get relief and excitement when it does play off.
Like, is that like, how do you come in terms of like guessing those numbers? Is it always kind of like in your head, or is it always like, oh, you just spit numbers out like randomly and you just get it right? Because that's kind of like I know some like magicians and some of those people do.
You're trying to dig into the secrets of how magic works here. This is I can't be publicly telling you these trade secrets. No, it's like a bit of like I need to be able to read people, but then there's also other little cheeky techniques that I'm using that people just would not notice, like would not suspect. So yeah, and I've seen so for example, I've seen other magicians do a similar effect, but I actually don't know if they're doing it the same way I'm doing it. I saw someone do it and I was like, oh, that's such a fun concept because everybody has a unique secret code that they have for their phone or their bank account or whatever it might be. What's a way to get these numbers in a playful way? I couldn't go up to someone and steal their phone and just guess it. I need them to kind of be like playing along and okay for me to get it, which generally people are. So yeah, again, I don't know if my method is the same that anyone else who has done something similar would use because I kind of just came up with it. It probably is, but yeah, I've been pretty coy there. I haven't really told you how I do it.
Interesting. But like you took your magic to Australia's Got Talent and like with your audition, like what was like I know every kind of audition has a message and has like a kind of like a different meaning to it. Like what was kind of like your message in America's Got like I don't know why I'm saying America. Like I'm so used to saying America but Australia.
Maybe one day I'll go over there. Don't worry. I might pop over and perform on that one, hopefully. But the message on the Australian talent, it was it was like a personal story. I wanted to use magic to weave in a important message. So I thought, and it worked out that magic can be pretty entertaining. It's like a visual art and can be funny and fun. So I was able to do pull that off and also weave in like a story and a message and a take home for people who've watched it to whatever it might be. The general theme was about mental health. So I was just hoping that someone would it would help them feel better or encourage them to reach out to a friend or something like that. So that was the idea. And also I obviously wanted it to be a fooling, interesting magic trick in its own. So that was the challenge to do both. And I think it worked out. So I was pretty proud of it.
And like what like it was behind kind of similar to mental health, right? Like you said, like it was kind of around mental health, or was this all kind of connecting people with magic to make their like kind of like life better if they're suffering?
Yeah, it was almost something that even if you didn't like magic, like some people just don't have an interest in magic tricks, which is fair enough. I still wanted it to be something that you could watch and listen to and maybe connect with. So it wasn't so much that I wanted people to walk away and see magic as a way to help their mental health or anything like that. It was more just here's a story. I want you to hear this story. And I think the best way to get the most people to hear the story is by weaving it into the middle of a magic trick. And that was what happened. So people, and I sneak it in there because I don't want people to tune out at the start. I'm wearing like a flamingo shirt and I'm telling all these silly jokes and I'm like having banter with the judges and then I just whip into this kind of serious piece and yeah, I got them off guard. It was pretty fun.
Like how did they like kind of react when you kind of caught them off guard and stuff like that? Like was that like kind of like a crazy thing or is it kind of like, oh, this guy's caught off guard. Like, I know what this guy's doing. Like I know like a lot of people kind of like to let the judges not know what they're doing. This because
That's
it
right.
make it like more easier for them, like more kind of less like nerve-wracking, I should probably say. Like it was that kind of like the what it was for you, or was it the total opposite?
So that's right. The judges, and that's the good thing about the show, they genuinely don't know what you're about to do. You walk out on the stage and they you could be a singer, you could be a artist, a dancer, or a magician or anything else. So they don't know, which is good because their reactions are genuinely, fresh. So I went out there and I knew that they didn't know what I was going to do, and it helped me shape my performance. And when I get to this point in this trick where they kind of see where it's going, and it ends out it's a story that's actually about me and it's quite personal. The watch like realizing that the judges make that realization and their reaction to it actually was kind of like, whoa, like they it hit them hard, I guess. Like, and it was funny because I'd performed that, like I practiced all day. I think I performed at 10 p.m. that the night of when I performed it. So I'd been doing 12 hours almost of just rehearsing this thing so I can memorize it. It's like quite a long script and has to be word for word and everything. So I was pretty stoic to the whole thing, the whole process. And then when I do it and the judges actually realize it's about me and I kind of look up and I see their reaction, they kind of starting to get emotional, then it hit me as well. And the same thing with the crowd. The crowd was just dead silent and they hear this like moment of like, oh my God, this is about a guy who's just telling us about his depression, like right here, there he is in front of all these cameras and all these people watching. So I then realized, like, oh wow, yeah, this is a story about me. Like this is real, and it kind of got me quite emotional as well. But luckily, it was near the end of it, and I was able to finish off the right words, and yeah, so yeah, it was cool. It was good them not knowing what I was going to do.
Like as you kind of mentioned, like the audience and kind of the judges kind of got like emotional. I think one of them was like crying or something, like was brought to tears by the act. Like like how did it really that make you feel? Like I know you talked about depression. Like I dealt with depression as well, like anxiety, depression all my life. So I was like kind of like wondering like how did you feel kind of in that moment when you kind of realize like, oh, this is a story about my life and my journey with depression, like and they kind of realized it, like how did that like make you feel?
Yeah, so touching on what I was saying earlier about if that was the moment that I realized like, yeah, I've obviously I knew it was about me when I wrote it, but I performed it so many times and I kind of got used to saying the words that I felt somewhat numb to this like story that I was writing. And in the story, I use a fake name. I talk about a guy named Jack just to get the story going. And yeah, when I look up and I see Alicia, who's the judge you're mentioning, who was crying or had a tear in her eye, and the judge and then the audience, I could hear people just got like it was dead silent at this moment, and I could then just hear people making that realization. That's when, yeah, it just kind of triggered me a little bit, just being like, oh man, this is about you. This is, you know, all these emotions and things have happened to you, and yeah, it kind of made me a bit emotional and I guess sad, but the judges were very kind and encouraged me to keep going, and I finished it off and they were very sweet with everything they said afterwards, so it was a great experience.
That's amazing. Like, was there kind of like a process getting into like Australia Got Talent, or was it kind of like an easy process getting into like this, sending a message, be like, hey, I want to be part of it, and they just let you in, or was it like the total opposite? Because I know like a lot of like talent things or like televised things usually kind of have to have like a certain kind of process to be on the show. Like a lot of judges don't know who's going to be on. This is always a kind of like a surprising kind of thing going on.
I actually applied 5 or 6 years ago, and then I didn't really have a plan. I kind of just walked in, and you meet some judge. There's like a round where you meet the TV producers that aren't the judges that you see on TV, but they're people who like are judging talent and they have an eye for TV. And I actually went in there and just did some magic, made it up on the spot. Like I didn't really have a plan, like an act, like the one I did. And this was, yeah, I want to say like 2017 as a guess. And they were like, okay, look, well, if you have an actual plan, let us know, like maybe next year. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I wrote that story, not intending to do it on Australia's Got Talent. I kind of just wrote it while I was at home, and then they actually reached out and go, "Hey, we're doing it again this year. This is now 2019. Did you end up creating something?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I actually have. I didn't really. This works out really well. I'm going to come in and show you." So you have to go in and go to this was like a special place. They probably had thousands of people coming in through the day, like
Oh.
so flying into Sydney to show these TV producers. And I, yeah, showed them that story. And they're like, yeah, this is what we wanted you to do the first time. Like we wanted you to like have a plan. So that, yeah, that was the first step. And once they see thousands of people and they whittle that down to around 100 that end up going on the TV audition round with the judges. So it was, yeah, there's a little bit of a process, but the story just was worked for them. And I was actually kind of proud and impressed that they allowed me to tell such a, you know, deep story on TV. It's like it's like a bit of a family show, and it's like a bit of a sad thing that there was a chance that they were like, oh, this is a bit too, I don't know, risque for us. But yeah, it was cool that they let me do it.
Like, were you like, was it all like 100 people? Like, were you like part of like 100 people in 2019, or was it like a different year that you got to be part of the show like that at that time?
Yes. So the first year that I applied and sort of just didn't get on, I don't know how many people applied. But yeah, when I went in and showed them the story that ended up making it to television, yeah, there would have been thousands that across Sydney and Melbourne and all the other big cities in Australia that went in for that stage. And then when we filmed it, that was filmed over a couple of days that you see on TV, and there was like 100 to 150, and a lot of them are international acts as well. Like it's pretty cool. I remember just walking around the back area, just looking around, thinking these people are all famous Instagrammers, TikTok, got YouTube channels, have done other Got Talents before. I'm like, these people are all so experienced in this. What am I doing here? But yeah, no, it ended up being pretty fun. It was got made a lot of friends. I got a lot of connections with other people around the globe who are doing these little things.
Like that's actually pretty crazy that you got like out of like 1,000 kind of people that are there internationally, not just from Australia. And like you guys like did it in Sydney, right? The auditions.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, that's actually pretty crazy because like of course Sydney is like a big city in Australia, and like Sydney and Melbourne, I think are the main ones. And like I think like that's actually crazy that like out of like 1,000 people that like were down from all over the world, not just from Australia, and you were lowered to like 100 people is actually pretty amazing.
yeah. Just getting on the show is something like that I was proud of. Like being asked to go on the show to make that final list, and then making it to the TV edit. Like some people get there and make that 100 list and then go out and perform, and then they don't actually, they might make it as like a little short clip of like 20 seconds or something. So I was very proud to, yeah, make it on the TV, and then them show my whole thing. Like that was a big win.
Hmm. For sure. And like how, like do you do like magic at like events, weddings and stuff like that? Because I saw something like you like do all these like events and weddings and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's the full-time job. Weddings are a good example. Here in Australia, there'll often be the ceremony, the actual wedding ceremony at 3 till 3:30 in the afternoon, and then there's not the actual reception, dinner, speeches part until sometimes 6, 7 o'clock. So there's a couple of hours, and during that time, the bridal party, like the wife, the bride and groom, or however that is, are having their photos taken, and the rest of the guests are kind of hanging around somewhere, just not not mingling much, that's when I love turning up, doing 2 or 3 hours of magic, roaming around to people. And I like to dress up as if I'm a guest. Like I'll just wear a suit and walk up to a group of people with a beer and just say, "How do you guys know Luke and Steve?" And then just chat to them and then pull out a deck of cards from behind their ear and then do magic for to them and try and break the ice a bit and have some fun with it. So yeah, a lot of weddings, a lot of the corporate things on a stage, and you get the big room full of people and you try and guess someone's passcode. Hopefully it works. And yeah, you can get everyone involved as well. There's some tricks that are great where you get everyone to pull out their phone and to play along, and then that's always like a great touch rather than something where they've just got to watch. And so I love trying to be as interactive as I can.
Like what, like did you start doing that after Australia's Got Talent, or was that like before you even got to be part of that whole thing?
Yeah, that's always been I guess I've been like the first time I did it as like a paid event, maybe was 12 years ago. So over the last few years, it's been ramping up a lot more to do more and more events. But yeah, it's been something that I've been doing for a long time. I feel totally like at ease walking up to a group of strangers and having a chat and doing some magic to them. Where I know I didn't always feel that way. Like, I remember
Mm-hmm.
having a New Year's resolution when I was not that long ago, only like 5 or 6 years ago. It's like I'm gonna do a magic trick to a stranger every day just to like try and get the reps up. And I don't think I ended up doing it lasting that long, but now I can't even relate to that because it's just something I've done so often that it's just totally fine.
Like I know like a lot of people like always like a lot of people seem like they have like a lot of confidence in like being in front of a camera or basically going up to strangers and be like, hey, look at this. Like not a lot of people kind of have that confidence. Like I know I didn't have that confidence in terms of being in a public kind of space in terms of being like kind of going out there. I wasn't that way as well. But then like I was like, my New Year's resolution should be like like going in public eye and be like, hey guys, I'm a journalist. Like, how's it going? Like stuff like that. Like it's just like I never was that person.
But you've done what over 100 podcasts now. How have you changed since podcast number one and talking to new people?
Oh, so much. So much. If you like see me from episode number one to now, like it's totally different. Like for the first like episode, I was basically not like making conversation. I was just like, yeah, next question. Like I was just basically trying to get through it without like messing up or like this like and plus it was all new. I didn't know how podcasts work. I just basically just made a podcast, sent messages and this like along with that. I didn't know how that you were supposed to make conversation during like podcasting. I didn't know about that stuff. But if you see things like now to these episodes, you're like, oh yeah, that's a big difference to the first episode. But like it's like when you go into podcasting, it's much like you have to get comfortable and try to be on Zoom or in person. I know some people do it in person. I know like you have to kind of be more comfortable in doing that. Like you probably have to do it so much. Like I do this like mostly every single day about the time. So it's like the more you do it, the more you kind of get comfortable, the better you get, and the more comfortable you get in terms of doing interviews and being less nervous.
Yeah, you're totally right. And you might see someone who's in your field, whether it's podcasting or magic or singing or dancing, and you're just like, I could never see myself being that confident and comfortable. They've naturally got it. There's no way I could do it. And then if you actually put in the reps and do 50, 100 times doing this thing, you'll realize quickly that that's all it is. They've just done it that many times, and you learn. So yeah, good on you for pushing through and yeah, growing in that space. It's a good skill to have. Conversations, talking to people, listening, asking the right questions, arguably the best skill you could possibly have.
For sure. Like I'm sure that's like the key to magic as well as like you have to kind of have the conversation and like kind of like the talent to kind of pursue it. Like you have to try so much. I know magic is much harder than journalism or like podcasting itself. So I applaud you for doing it because it's much harder than kind of like what people kind of expect it to be.
So it's another funny thing. And to me, journalism would be much harder. And I like kind of smile when you say magic's harder, but that's probably the case. You'd speak to anyone in a field, if they're a mathematician or astrologist or just something, you'll always think that's so much harder than what I do, and they'll think the opposite because they've just done it for so long, and to them it's just become so easy. So yeah, magic. It's funny. It's it's become easy, but that's just probably because I've done it for so long. And I guess I get to see that, particularly in teaching my nephews and nieces some magic and watching them not have the confidence to try something out when I know it's going to work. I'm like, go up to your mum and do this trick. It's going to work. And they're like, no, no, it won't work, which is probably what I was like. And I probably thought it was so hard, but yeah, it's a good thing that you can do something for so long and then it becomes easy. Everyone thinks you're so good at it. It's like, it's easy.
Yeah, for sure. You just like the more like you do it, like the more people that think it's easier than you possibly think. Of course, it can be difficult, but as time goes on, you're like, this is as easy as a feather. Like this is the easiest thing as like you probably ever do, but it's always never like that. It's never that easy.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
like, but I wanted to ask you, like, how did you come up with the name Magic Mike? Like, how did you come up with that?
So obviously, are you aware of the movie, the Channing Tatum movie?
Oh, I love that movie. Yeah, that's one of my
Okay.
favorite movies.
So it's funny when people don't know that movie. That's when it kind of the explaining stuff gets a bit strange. But anyway, for that movie, obviously his name's Magic Mike, but has very little to nothing to do with magic in the terms of tricks and illusions. So my real name is Michael, and there's a couple of funny comedians in Australia who mentioned me on one of their podcasts, and they referred to me as Magic Mike, and they said, "Oh, but not the stripper, not Channing Tatum." And then they started having back and forth, being like, "Oh, would you rather him at a hen's party?" Which is, what do you guys call? What do you call it? Hen's parties, like when a bridal, when what's the term that you get in America you use
Like
for?
bridal parties?
No, but more like the when like you go, that's when you go and get drunk and you kind of have a bit more fun. Is it a bridal party or like a?
Yeah, I think it's a bridal party. Yeah, I think it
Okay.
is.
Okay, so we sometimes have bridal parties, but they're a little bit more tame. Like a stag do is another term, and yeah, that's like the male one. I forget what it's called. Female. Anyway, we call them a bucks party for men and a hens party for females. So they mentioned Channing Tatum and me, and they compared us, and obviously it's like, but this is a different Magic Mike. He's not a stripper, and I just thought it was a pretty funny idea because it lets people know that I'm I'm a magician because I'm not a stripper, but I'm also just not taking things too seriously. Like it's very common to have a magician have their name as like the fantastic Steve or some sort of grand illusion name, which is fine. But I prefer to be like, oh, I'm just like, I mean, I do magic, but I'm also trying to just be a bit silly and have fun with it. So I think the name works. It serves its purpose. It's kind of funny and it, lets people know what I do.
Like, is your Instagram name like Magic Mike Not Stripper? Is that your Instagram name?
Yeah, and again, I just changed it to that when these comedians made this reference because they have quite a big reach. So I thought, oh, on a small chance that someone searches that, they'll find me. And I was only planning on changing it for a week. And then I just thought, this is funny. Like, and this is me. This is a bit silly. I'm gonna keep it like that. And yeah, so probably cost me a job or two because some government agencies are a bit more serious. Like, we can't have someone with the name not a stripper in there, working
Yeah.
for us. But that's fine. I'm happy to lose a few because it's pretty funny overall.
Yeah, it's actually like hilarious. So like the like actually think that's someone's Instagram name. Like it's actually hilarious, but actually so true in real life though.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I actually answer the phone. I'll like, get a phone call from a number I don't know, like Magic Mike, not a stripper. And people find it funny. Like, you
Oh,
actually answer the phone like that? Like, yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I would definitely like if I were you, I would definitely enter the phone like that. If something random calls, I'd be like, "Hey, I'm Magic Mike, not stripper." Like that's me.
You should start doing it. See what happens. It's pretty fun.
Yeah,
That'll be
I definitely would. Now I'm like, you got me to make you do that now.
yeah.
But,
Just see
but
what
like,
happens.
what is like some advice for like upcoming magicians that kind of want to start out or just kind of starting?
Well, probably when you practice, try and do as much of those practice hours, which is going to sound tough, in front of other people versus doing, you get a new idea for a trick or you've watched a book, a DVD or a book or YouTube or something about how to do a trick. You could probably spend 20 hours in front of a mirror and by yourself doing it, or you could do 10 in front of the mirror and then 10 trying to do it to people. You'll just get a way better return on your time if you're doing it to people. Like they'll be honest. You'll just realize what moments are they likely to be making eye contact with you and with your hands, and like when can you get away with the cheeky moves. So just in general, and it's hard because there's a fear of failure in front of people, but it's just a much better use of your time if you can just go out with a trick idea and do it to people and just be ready for it not to work and just go. I learn way more when it doesn't work. That's like true. If you my best tricks are the ones that I've probably failed at 10 times because now I'm so ready for every different type of thing that can go wrong. Whereas something that's just kind of worked always for me, I could probably be vulnerable to some tricky person who's going to try and catch me out. So yeah, just embracing failure and practicing on other people. That's it. It's hard, easier said than done, but it's worth it.
For sure. It's more practice, the better. Like even though you fail 10 times, like even though I fail, like I really failed yesterday at work. Like definition of fail is
Yeah.
the best thing you learn every single day, no matter how hard and like frustrating like it takes.
Yeah. Like I just remember reading a book about someone who almost made it a goal to fail 100 times in something that they were doing and turned failure into like a fun uh you know outcome where if you're performing something, doing whatever task and it works, that's usually pretty good feeling. And then if it fails, it sucks. But this person managed to go like, I want to try and fail 100 times. They didn't deliberately sabotage themselves, but they just got counted up the failures. So it almost raced someone else to 100. It's like that's a great way to reframe that process to be like, it's okay to fail because it's just an extra one on my scorecard to race to 100.
hmm Yeah, for sure. And I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And where can people find you on social media if they want to connect with you, by the way, or kind of like want to book you for events and stuff like that?
Best is Instagram. Instagram's where I do all my funnest stuff. And as you mentioned, yeah, it's just Magic Mike underscore not a stripper. So that's it. But Kylie, before we run, I'm going to do a real quick trick for you here. We're doing this
Mhm.
here. You got see the deck of cards here? Bang,
Yeah.
double camera. With for those of you just listening, I've just switched the cameras so she can see a deck on the table. Kylie, obviously, there's the random cards, you know the drill, but I actually turned over one card in there, which I just showed you. What could you just name? Could you name a card? You obviously haven't seen. Just randomly name a card. I've been trying to implant the thought in your head over the last half an hour.
Queen of Hearts.
Incredible. Just look at this. You see that I actually turned over the ace of spades. I thought you'd be the sort of person. I actually, well, funny thing is, I turned over all of the aces. Can you see them all here?
Ooh, yeah.
I was hoping that you'd choose an ace, but you went with what was it?
Queen of Hearts.
That's funny though, because I wrote something on the back of these cards on this first ace. Can you read out what does this say here?
The Queen of Hearts. Oh my gosh.
On the
That's
back of each ace,
insane.
one says the Queen of Hearts.
That's insane. Bro, that's crazy.
That
You're
was
good. I have to admit, you're pretty good.
That was 1 in 52 chance. I got lucky. All right, but thanks so much, Kylie. Absolute pleasure to chat to you.
Of course, thank you so much. I'll definitely catch up with you soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Talk soon. Go the Dodgers.
Yes, sir.